kitchen trap!
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to all of you here. It's super cold out today, isn't it? It's like for real cold. Like I know in Kitchener, it's not as cold or as snowy. And I know in Chatham, you guys are in like the banana belt. You guys are probably wearing shorts this morning. So just so you know, up here in Waterloo, it's very cold this morning. And but there's like a full room. So these people, we got real Christians here, just like... And people that are seekers, you are also welcome. We're so glad that you're here. If you're a follower, if you're not, we're so glad that you're in the room, that you're in Kitchener, Chatham, West Side, online. My name is Pete. I'm one of the pastors here. And we're ending a series today called All the Trappings, where we've been exploring what is Christmas all about? What makes for the apex Christmas experience? What are all of the things that go into a good Christmas experience celebration? And so we've been talking about how we live in a culture that is very busy and fast-paced, and that gets amplified around the Christmas season, and yet Christmas is supposed to be a time where we slow down, where we wait, where we spend some time in silence. We've been talking about how Christmas is supposed to be centered around the person of Jesus, and we live in a culture that is doing all kinds of things that have nothing to do with Jesus, and yet plastered on them is, this is Christmas. This is what Christmas is all about. Remember this? Remember this? This is a Christmas cup. Why? I don't know. It just is. It just has the right colors, and it says Christmas, but it has nothing to do with Jesus. And last week we talked about how Christmas is a time when we celebrate that God comes to give us a gift. The gift of his love. And we live in a culture that would say, yeah, gifts for good people, not gifts for bad people, but Christmas is a time when God says, gifts for everyone. And this morning we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have kind of sort of a, culture looks at Christmas this way, and yet Christmas also has this other theme in it. So just to get your minds thinking, when you think of the manger scene, when you think of God in the flesh come down to be one of us, to be God with us, when you picture the manger, what sort of feelings come to mind? What do you start to feel? I'd imagine that maybe when you think of Christmas, you start to feel feelings like this.
Happy Christmas, everyone. Hope you have a nice get together, a nice meal. A nice meal. I don't think
Supermarket, bringing our families together since 1981.
I really thought that at the end of that, in my head, I thought, and then I'll come up and I'll go, oh, because everyone will be feeling, oh. And yet, in both services now, everyone's just laughing like that. I didn't see that coming. But anyways, bringing our families together since 1980. That's what Christmas is all about. Isn't that bringing families together? It's all about bringing people together since at least 1981. That's what Christmas is about. Let's pray and we'll go home. No, let's go to our text. Today we're going to go back to the story that we looked at the first week of this series, which is the story of Jesus being brought as a young boy, as a young baby, to the temple, and he's going to be like dedicated there. And when his parents, Mary and Joseph, bring him to the temple, there's a mysterious figure that we just see like pop up in the narrative, and he never appears again. His name's Simeon, and he's like a prophet. And he's been waiting a long time for the arrival of God's anointed one, for the Messiah, for the new king of the Jewish people to arrive. And he's been waiting, and the Holy Spirit has told him, that couple with that baby, that's the one that you've been waiting for. And if you remember, then Simeon goes and he picks up the baby Jesus and he holds Jesus and he says, Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. God has come to save his people. Christmas. That's what it's all about. Bringing families together since at least 1981. And the child's father and mother, they marveled at what was said about him. So you just get the scene, Mary and Joseph, and they're watching this old man. Perhaps it was a little creepy, but no, it was probably beautiful. And he's holding their baby, and he's saying these beautiful words about, and they're like, we are chosen. This is great. And then Simeon would say, I have a few more things to say. And so then it says that Simeon blessed them. And he said to Mary, his mother, this child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed. This child will go into the world, and there will be people who will begin to follow him. And it will be like they are rising. They are rising, like they're experiencing good things because they're following him. But there will be those who don't follow him. And it'll be like they're falling. There will be a reversal of like the first will become last and the last will become first, those who choose to follow. And he will be a sign that will be spoken against. Some people will hear his message. They'll see what he's doing, what he's proclaiming, what he's saying about himself, and they will speak against him. Get rid of that guy. Get rid of him. Push him off a cliff. Let's kill him. Let's arrest him. Let's get rid of him. And they will eventually succeed. This baby will be a sign who will be spoken against, and the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed. This baby, he will grow up and he will begin to cause division among people. Some people will rise and some people will fall. Some people will speak good about him and some people will speak against him. He will look into the hearts of people and he will reveal, he will expose what's really going on in there. And then Simeon has one last thing to say. Remember, he's speaking to Mary. And a sword will pierce your own soul too. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Some people think that this sword is referencing that Mary will see her son Jesus die on a cross, which maybe it is. We're not told any more about it, so there's a lot of interpretation to do around what does he maybe mean. He maybe means that. He may also just mean that Mary, as you follow Jesus, you will experience a pain. It will be like being stabbed in the heart. It'll be difficult. There will be a division even just within yourself of wanting to follow and not being able to follow. You will experience a pain as you follow your son Jesus. And so when you think about the manger theme, there are many things to think about. But this morning we're going to think about how the manger brings a sword. When you think about the coming of God into the world, Simeon says at least, some people will rise and some people will fall. Some people will speak good of this Jesus and some people will speak against him. And a sword will pierce your own soul too. Well, thank goodness he was wrong, right? This is just baby Jesus, and it's some weird prophet in a temple. He was off, right? Because Jesus grew up, and Jesus became a guy who was all about love and unity. Jesus wasn't about like division, right? Was he? Jesus would grow up, and he would start a movement preaching about the kingdom of God, and he would gather disciples around him. And in Matthew chapter 10, when he sends those disciples out, he will say to them these words: "Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." Is that a real verse? That's a real one. You can look it up. I didn't come to bring peace. Twice he says it, but a sword. He might as well be quoting what Simeon said about him when he was just a baby. He goes on, "For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." Well, at least that one we get. A man, you were laughing too loud. Someone in here, too loud. Okay. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Jesus, when he sends out his disciples, says, this message that you are bringing is like bringing a sword into the world. And there will be those who acknowledge me, and there will be those who do not acknowledge me. And there will be within family groups, fathers who acknowledge and sons who don't, and fathers who do. And there will be division between mothers and daughters. There will be division within families because of this message that you're bringing. There will be those who give their allegiance to me and those who do not give their allegiance to me. There will be those who decide, I will lose my life to gain this new life of following Jesus. And there will be those who cling to their old life and they lose the life that Jesus is inviting them into. Jesus brings a sword, apparently. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. Some of you are like, this tone feels off for Christmas. Don't worry, we'll change the tone for tomorrow and the next day for Christmas Eve. But for this morning, we're contemplating the manger and a sword. You know, there'll be a time later in Jesus' life as he's an adult and he is teaching in a home. And he's got his students around him. And you imagine like a packed house. And the Gospels tell us the story in a couple different ways. But in one of the ways, his mother and his brothers come. And they're coming to get him because they're like, Jesus has gone a little crazy. We need to go get him. And they come and they can't get to him. They're like on the outside of the house. And so they say like, send someone in to get Jesus and tell him that his mother and brothers are here. And someone gets in and says, Jesus, your mother and brothers are outside. And Jesus says, my mother and brothers are here with me. They're the ones who obey my words. Imagine being the messenger, bringing that back out to Mary. You know, Mary, oh. Imagine telling Mary, he says his mother's in there with him. What do you think that felt like? Like a sword piercing her soul, maybe? What do you mean he says his mother's in there? I'm his mother. In Revelation chapter 1, when John has this wild vision, he sees Jesus. And one of the ways that he describes Jesus as being one who has a sword coming out of his mouth, a sharp, double-edged sword coming out of his mouth. Why? Because he creates division. Who's following? Who's not? Jesus brings a sword. And some of you are thinking, I don't know, this feels, I haven't heard this before. But some of you are thinking, this makes sense because my Christmas experience feels like this. When you think about your workplace or the dinner tables that you'll be around or the friends that you'll be with this Christmas season, you recognize the division that Jesus has caused in your life. There are people at the tables that you will sit around this Christmas season and you've had fights with them because you're a follower of Jesus and they're not. There are people that aren't at the table because something about you following Jesus is unacceptable to them. They don't even want to be around you. And that experience is like having a sword. Like for the people that you love, for your children that are no longer want to be around you during the Christmas season because you're a follower of Jesus, it feels like a sword. Some of you are like, I get it. I get what Jesus is saying. That his message isn't all lovey-dovey and bringing families together. Sometimes his message brings families apart. But then some of you are a little too excited right now. Because some of you are like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew Jesus brought a sword. I'm finally glad to be at a church that talks about a sword that Jesus brings. I'm ready to wield the sword. You're like, yes, Jesus does not come to bring peace. Jesus comes to say, sinner, 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 sinner. You are not my mother. Ah, you are not my father. Ah. I'm just speaking the truth in love. And sometimes the truth hurts. Some of you are a little too excited. But what do we do with this? Jesus said, I don't come to bring peace but a sword. But you know the other stories about the Jesus who is full of love and compassion and mercy. And in that same chapter, Matthew chapter 10 that we read earlier, where Jesus talks about the division that his message will create, when he sends out his disciples, he says this to them, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. I'm not sending you out as wolves. You're not wolves with like teeth like swords. You're the sheep. What's that going to be like, Jesus? To go out with your message like sheep? It's going to mean that you're going to need to be shrewd and wise as snakes, but to remain as innocent as doves. Paul, when he writes to the church in Rome, will say this, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. No, Paul, Jesus said he didn't come to bring peace. What do we do with that? Are we bringers of peace or bringers of a sword? Why does Jesus frame his sending of us out into the world with this language? I think he does it because he wants us to anticipate what some of the reactions that we will get will be. I think that he sends us out with this message because he wants us to expect that not everyone's going to be thrilled with this message. Because imagine if he sent us out and he was like, hey, when you go out into the world and talk about me, everyone's going to love it. Oh my goodness, you will be loved by everyone. Jesus is like, that's not what it's going to be like. Some people will. Some people you will speak about my love and my light, and they will be stuck in slavery in the darkness, and that light will shine on them, and they'll be like, thank God. But other people will be like, I like the darkness. I want to stay here. And Jesus prepares us for that reaction. Hey, I know you're really excited about following me, but not everyone will be. And that means that this message will create division. So if you're writing anything down today, write down these few words. Jesus wants us to expect division, but he doesn't want us to amplify division. And sometimes Christians get really excited about amplifying the division rather than just, I expect it. I expect that as I follow Jesus, that people who decide not to follow Jesus, that there will be a sort of divide there. I expect that as I begin to live differently as I begin to spend my money differently, as I begin to spend my time and energy differently, as I begin to speak differently, that those who are not on the same journey as me will experience a sort of like, hey man, you're not like us anymore. You think you're better than us? You're holy now. And Jesus is like, that's what my message does. Which takes extreme wisdom to navigate. I experienced this sort of wisdom the other day. I turned 40 about 10 days ago or so, which you probably have noticed because I sound a lot wiser now. But I'm 40 now, and so I need some cologne because I'm older and I need to smell good. So I went shopping for some cologne with my wife. And I love shopping for like cologne or perfume because normally in a store, there's like the cash register is at the exits, like to prevent you from stealing anything. I don't know, but like it's like the last thing you do, right? But when you go shopping for perfume, it's right in the middle of the store. Like there's that little like kiosk rectangle thing. And if you just hang around there, like looking and like smelling things, suddenly a person pops up. They're like, hi, may I help you? And these are the nicest humans that you can meet in a department store. I often say to my wife, I'm like, do you think they work here or maybe they just volunteer? They put the stuff on the little cards and they wave it in front of you. This lady was so nice. She had a thing of coffee beans and she's like, here, cleanse your palate in between. I'm like, oh, this is great. Do we have a chair? Can we just hang out? What's your name? This is so nice. And so we're smelling these different things, and I realize, like, I don't know what I want to smell like. I don't know. I'm a guy. And so she goes, well, what would you like to smell like? And so all I could remember was being like 15, and the hottest thing to smell was CK1, Calvin Klein #1. And so I said, I remember like CK1, is that a thing? And the disappointment on her face. The disappointment as I reflect now as a bald 40-year-old man said, I'd like to smell like a 15-year-old boy, that the look on her face, but she held it together so well. And you know what she said? She said, let's move forward. I was like, and I recognized in the moment, and you can ask my wife because I said it afterwards right away. I was like, wasn't that a great line? Like that was a moment to lose a customer. That was a moment to create division between me and her. And instead she had the perfect line that I was like, that was just beautifully said. Let's move forward. I hope that Christians can be known for speaking like that. We got truth, but we've thought about how to say it. We've thought about how to say it so that it creates opening, invitation, rather than, we got truth, you better get on side, or else sword. And Jesus is coming with the sword, and we're holding it firm right now. Jesus never told you to have a sword. He said he has a sword. He said his message has a sword. So I hope that we can think that way. So here's what I want you to do. Think ahead to the social situations that you're gonna be in the next 2 weeks. You're going into some hot territory for some of you. Family members that you only see a couple times a year. Certain conversations that come up because you're in a work setting that's a little bit less formal, and so people are gonna talk about their personal lives a bit more. You know that there are conversations coming up about, hey, what do you think about Uncle so-and-so is now? What do you think about this hot button issue in the culture? What do you think about politics? You know that those conversations are coming. How will you respond? I invite you, think about how you will respond. Don't be the person who just goes into the same setting that you've been in before. You get caught up in the same things. You say the things that you wish you didn't say, and on the drive home, you're like, I did it again. Every Christmas, I get sucked in, and I say that stuff, and I wish. You can think about it right now. You can choose, how will I express what I believe in a way that feels more like, let's move forward. What if there's gonna be times where instead of engaging, you say nothing? You're like, I'm not getting involved in any of that. I got involved in that last year. That was terrible. What are you guys talking about? I'm gonna get some pie. My pastor said twice the pie, less conflict this time. You don't have to say anything. You may feel, you don't have to say anything. Jesus didn't always speak. And how about this? When you're asked a question, what if you just do what politicians do? Just don't answer the question. Say something completely different. Politicians are great at that. You know who else was great at that? Jesus was great at that. People asked him questions. Go and look at all the places where Jesus is asked a question. He almost never answers the question. He almost always asks them a question or just starts telling a story. They're like, Jesus, how do we get to heaven? And he's like, let me tell you, there's a man who had 2 sons. And people were like, and literally, like, there's times when he did that, and the disciples later on, they're like, Jesus, what the heck were you talking about there? And he's like, I talk that way because some people will get it, and some people won't, and some people will get it later. But he's creating opportunity for invitation. What if you just reframe, redirect? What if you just start telling a story? Hey, what do you think about this thing? We're going to decide if we like you or not right now. And you're like, I was watching, I don't know, just start talking about something completely different. You can think ahead to these situations and choose to create openings rather than unnecessary opposition and division. But to end this morning, I want to take this topic and turn it inward and have us realize that within each one of us, there is a part of us that wants to follow Jesus. What does God want me to do? How does he want me to live? I want that. And there's a part of us that's like, there's some other stuff that people do that I would like to do as well. Like all my friends are doing this thing, and when I'm engaged in this, I feel like this is not your best for me, but I really like it. It's like a crutch. It's like a thing that helps me cope. Like I really want to hold on to this. And during this season, the Jesus who brings a sword wants to challenge you and say, okay, will you let me cut those things off? Would you let me take the part of you that wants to follow me, and we'll amplify that, and we'll get rid of these other parts? Will you let Jesus prune the parts of your life, the parts of your desires that are off, that don't really want to follow him? We have this vision that we've been talking about at the church since September, and some of the wording around it is that we want to be a church that's growing, that's making room for more and more people. And so we started praying that in September, and in a couple of weeks, we're going to have 3 services here in Waterloo, which means more people serving, more people sacrificing for longer amounts of time on the weekend, on Sunday. It means that this room will feel different in a couple weeks because this room won't be as full for at least a little while because we're making space for more people. And when you hear that, is it like, no, I like how things are. I like a full room. I like the people that I sit around. I like serving this amount. I don't want to serve this amount. Or are you like, Jesus, cut that part of me off and help me to be excited that your church is growing? We've been praying for transformation, that God would be transforming us to be more and more like Jesus, which is like a pruning process where he's like, that has to go, and that has to go, and that feels like a sword piercing your heart sometimes. Will you say yes to that? Will you say yes to that pruning? We want to be a church that's impacting the neighborhoods and communities and the world through our international partners, but that requires serving, and that requires giving financially. And so while I am doing this weird Christmas vibe sermon with a sword, I thought, let's throw money in there as well, just get it all wrapped up with a bow. But there is a part of you that hears Jesus talk about giving, and you're like, yes, I'll give it all away. Yes, take it all, Jesus, empty the bank accounts for you. And then there's another part of you that's like, mine, my precious. And when Jesus is like, I'd like you to give sacrificially so my church can grow, you're like, you feel that division within yourself. When you hear a teaching about giving, you feel Jesus' sword. Like when you hear a sermon about preaching, you're like, it feels like, because you're being cut. Like there's a part of you that wants to follow, and there's a part of you that wants to hang on. Will you invite Jesus? Do your work. Jesus, you don't come to bring peace to me perfectly internally. You come to bring a sword. And after the sword, there will be peace. After you've pruned all these parts of me away, then I'll experience peace with you. And so to end this morning, I want to just lead us in a simple prayer that has 3 simple themes to it. Jesus, would you illuminate where I am divided? Jesus, help me to see that your way is better. Jesus, strengthen me to choose to follow you. So I want to pray this, and then we'll go. Jesus, show us where we are divided, where our allegiance is divided, where we are duplicitous in our discipleship. Help us to see it as clear as day, to see the ways we need to change. Jesus, help us to understand and to see that this is a better way, that what you're calling us to is better, that serving is better, the community is better, that growth is better, that giving is better, that where our treasure is, there our hearts will be also. May we be people who long to have our treasure stored in your kingdom. And may we be free from the love of money. Help us to see that that is a better way, that there is freedom in your way, there is peace in your way. And God, strengthen us by your Spirit to follow you. Our flesh is weak, but with your Spirit living inside of us, we have all the strength we need. So help us to lean on him. And may we find that day by day it's getting easier and easier because you're strengthening us. Jesus, we love you, and we love your church. We pray these things in your name. Amen.